your name, who you are, and where you work. That'll be super sufficient. So our folks who are new will know who you are. So I'll go ahead and start. Renee Delgado Riley, board chair, present. I work in the great state of Oregon for the university, and I serve as the board chair. So whoever wants to go next. Or I guess, you know what? Let me do it. I'm so sorry, y'all. I've been back to back since 8 a.m. this morning. So I didn't have even time to use the restroom between this call. So bear with me. So let's go ahead and do formal. Let's go with our vice chair, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Cloutier. I'm our vice chair, and I manage policy at Be Well, the health insurance marketplace for New Mexico. So nice to meet you. I'm looking forward to getting to know you and working with you.
Alejandra, our board secretary.
Hey everyone, my name is Alejandra Grijalva. I am the secretary for the board, and I'm the development director for a mental health nonprofit called Centro Savila here in Albuquerque. Good to meet you.
Janet as our board treasurer.
Hi, I'm Janet. I'm the treasurer, and I am the director of finance for Mimir, an educational startup.
James.
Hello, everyone. I'm James Abetha Stevens, and I am the Central New Mexico Community College, or CNM, Program Director for the Human Services Project and an instructor.
Awesome. Thank you, James. And lastly, Mike. You're still muted, Mike. You were muted that whole time. Sorry, Mike. We didn't hear you.
Sorry. And then I turned my camera off. All right, there we go. Let's try again. Sorry, Mike Quinn, and I'm executive director for Rio Grande, and I'm on the finance committee with Janet.
Awesome, thank you. So we have 6 of our 7 board members present. Mary Jones is excused for today, so we have official quorum to establish that today. And then we have some other guests on. So I guess round robin, if we just want to go and introduce ourselves, just so Samantha knows who we are. So Kat, I know that you know everyone, so maybe we'll go with Christopher, if you want to introduce yourself so Samantha knows who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Christopher Moore. I'm from K-12 Accounting. I am the business manager for Equip Academy of New Mexico. I've been involved at least since the start. So, just we're all chugging along. It's all new. A little bit crazy for everybody.
Thank you, Chris, for joining the roller coaster with us. And then, of course, I assume you know Abby. So Sam, this is Samantha. I don't want to call you by your name, however you want to be addressed. So if you want to introduce yourself to us, that would be great. And thank you in advance for taking notes.
Hi, I'm Savannah Lucero. I'm the sorry, got a little nervous. I'm the assistant, the operations assistant at Equip. I've been here, this is my 3rd week now, and I am excited to see how it continues to grow.
And my apologies, Savannah. I'm over here calling you Samantha again, going on poor sleep and a long day. So moving on with our agenda, thank you all for allowing yourselves to introduce yourselves for a second as we go through these multiple transitions as an organization. Before we go through the consent agenda, I just want to make some high-level housekeeping announcements. So obviously you saw the change and things that are happening with the board agenda and where it's going to be coming from, and the coordination of that will be on Kat and her team, which we really greatly appreciate that. That'll offset an additional task that we have to do as a board, which will allow us more time to focus on governing board tasks. So that's fantastic. So thank you for that. In terms of other housekeeping, we are moving the Google Drive from our original drive to the official school drive. So that way, when you log in with your Equip email, it's right there. There's going to be a little bit of growing pains in the process. So there are some things from removing the previous administrator's access. I had to change some links. So I know that some of you were running into access problems. In the interim, I'm going to reshare that all with your Equip email. So you'll be able to get into that drive in the interim while it's being migrated over. And again, thank you to Kat and her team for being willing to help with that migration process, because as you know, when you move things over, there's going to be broken links. So I just appreciate y'all's patience in that process. Okay, now that I'm done with housekeeping, let's go through actually, before I talk about the consent agenda, some of the postmortem and kind of opportunity to reflect on what's happened the last 6 weeks. For us, we're going to actually do that in some of the board chair updates when we talk about strategic planning. Also, head of school is going to give some updates on where we're at. So just feel like we're going to have an opportunity to decompress as a team to kind of talk about that past meeting, where we've been, and where we're going before the September 18th meeting. So just so you all know, it is built into the agenda under those items. Okay, now to the consent agenda. As you can see, this is different from previous meetings. We have the approval of the agenda, approval of minutes, approval of internal controls, which thank you, Janet, for sending in advance, and the public comment policy that we're adding to all our board meetings going forward. Obviously, it's probably not that critical right now since we're not opening, but it is something good to think about as we move forward. So before I ask for a motion to approve that, I just want to give you all time because this is different from previous meetings. Do you all have any questions or clarifications about the consent agenda before I ask for a motion? Hearing none, seeing none. Well, then, is there a motion to pass this consent agenda?
I, James Abatha Stevens, move to pass this consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second. It's Sarah.
And we're going to go ahead and do as long as you don't object to voting. So if we could just use our reaction tools in Zoom for everyone who consents or approves this consent agenda, go ahead and give your reaction. That will give Sam enough time to record that. So just for you, Savannah, so you see, it is unanimously passed as our consent agenda. So every one of our present board members approved for that. Thank you all for that. Third thing on our agenda being public comment. It's just something we need to have in. I'm really excited that now we have a public comment policy, which is really exciting. And I think that will help us as we go forward as a school. But I don't see anyone from the public. So we'll go ahead and proceed with our next item on the agenda, which is our head of school updates. So Kat, whenever you are ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. Madam Chair, distinguished board members, thank you for having us tonight. I know we've all had a chaotic Thursday, or at least I have in my office. So first on the agenda is our CSD presentation. I need to submit our broad strokes to CSD by August 29th for its review and analysis. And I need to, we have been developing a detailed plan for our opening for 26-27 school year. This will include our staffing plan, positions, licensure requirements, budgeted salaries, proposed start dates. I was fortunate enough to meet with Mr. Moore and Abby on Monday to develop my wish list and our 5-year budget. So that's pretty much putting things into perspective. So I have an idea of how that will look, or we have an idea of how that will look. With that, we'll give more updated details of staffing as the plan is implemented. I have a huge wish list. So with that, I like to see when we get out of the weeds some more time for grant writing and getting some money in so that we could adequately meet our academic goals. The other is a curriculum that I have to present to them aligned to the standards. Right now, what EQUIP has is a solid stance of using SFA, Success for All reading program. And my goal with that is to build a unified K-5 curriculum system, which will include literacy, writing, and content areas. With the PED today, I had a meeting, and there is an evaluation tool for our instructors and teachers to use K-5 literacy. It's my choice or our choice if we want to use it or not to evaluate. But the PED is also asking for letters training for our teachers as well. So I think in foreseeing our motivation in literacy rich, I want to use SFA thematic units in kindergarten and aligning that content area around those themes that support coherence in those subjects. So right now, again, the only curriculum I have in place is SFA, but I'm researching more high quality research-based curriculum programs for ELA, math, and science for K-5. and I'll focus on those programs that are evidence-based, they're widely adopted and vetted. We've been looking at ed reports and the clearinghouses. With that, I also have been attending meetings with the new accreditation with the PED. So just trying to get everything all in a bucket before I start spending on curriculum. Again, I want that vertical alignment across K through 5 for coherence. The other piece that CSD is asking for is to make sure I have a solid professional development plan, and that's again being updated based on the curriculum. We had a nice leadership plan laid out for this last summer, so I hope to follow some of those good things that were on that. But in addition to making sure that the staff, not just teachers, but all staff that we hire, are able to understand all the navigation throughout a school, so that professional development hopefully will include all. I'm working with Palms and Associates to ensure that we have all the HR trainings, all the trainings for Ms. Lucero, anything she needs to know to make sure that we're in HR compliance. She's already started. Thank you, Savannah, by the way, creating folders, HR folders, student folders. So just making sure that she's also, and myself, visiting other schools to see what kind of what their model looks like, so we can adopt it to what would be adequate for EQUIP. Also have to backwards plan and get some key timelines for them. The date that this is due is the 29th, but my condition for success to complete that is by next Tuesday. I just want to be sure that it's all in place, and you all can take a look at it. Renee, I'll send that through you for sure. Madam Chair, I also we worked on the budget implementation today. Thank you, Chris, and again, Abby, for helping with that. We're working with CSP to do the budget reconciliation. That was, I think, Chris, if correct me if I'm wrong, that's 99.9% done. And we submitted, or I'll be submitting after this meeting, my projected budget for CSP, so that we can go ahead and start paying our bills and get everything situated. What I'm hoping to do is just pay everything, make sure we're solid, and not start spending until October, just to make sure that we have a clean slate. We also have already sent the PR for our enrollment. What they asked for was our steps when we had to call the families of the students that were enrolled. So we have, Abby, thank you, has built a drive to put everything for CSP in there. So it shows all of our level of communication with all the families, and all of the results, and which schools we were able to help the students navigate towards too. I know with that, and I know I'm speaking to the CSD, but with that, we did have 33 families that were wanting to continue to join the EQUIP family for next year. They also want the update on the occupancy. So again, in efforts to spare us some dollars, we had to do some more work with regards to getting the building ready for that occupancy. So I opted not to get a temporary occupancy. There's really no need, and I'm waiting for the full occupancy. With that, the number of individuals that could be in the building at this time with our 19,000 and some square footage is 280 individuals. So we're waiting on getting that full occupancy, and that should be done by the end of next week. Insight has been amazing in helping us, as well as Mr. Aguilar, to make sure we have everything we need. So that's what's required for our CSD preparation. Any questions, Madam Chair or board members?
I'll just add some layers. Well, one, thank you, Kat and Abby, primarily too, for you all contacting every one of those families and going above and beyond to not just contact them, but to track that, as well as find other schools in the area that had open seats. I just want to say thank you. I don't want to speak for my fellow board members, but I know that was not an easy task to go back to the people that trusted us with that level of disappointment. And I think you all went above and beyond. So thank you for that. And thank you for tracking it. I think that you've done an excellent job, which makes that really easy to translate to the charter school division and what they're asking of our school. So thank you. And I can see my board member sentiment. Is really commemorable. So thank you
Yeah,
for that.
very much so.
And I definitely I would be remiss if I didn't want to give kudos to Abby. It took her probably most of the afternoon to get it done. That was the time when I was with family, and I have to give props to Abigail, because she knew the families personally. She reached out, and Abby, you did a great job. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Abby. And then I'll just add an extra layer. So as you can see here, I feel like it feels like an eternity since we all came together at our last meeting, right? There's a lot has happened in 6 weeks, but I do feel very confident in what the charter school division is asking Kat and her team to provide with our support. I feel very much ready to provide that information to them, and thanks to all the documentation and tracking. So tangentially related to that charter school division ask is the charter school program grant, right? There's definitely implications there. And so I do want to make sure you, Kat, because I know it's all related to what the charter school division is asking. Do you want to give a quick overview on all the meetings? You know, thank you, Janet, for also being there when I couldn't be there. Is just all that you're doing behind the scenes with the CSP grant and making sure that that's in order, reconciling, rebuilding budgets, re-looking at goals, and making sure that we're continually aligned.
If you don't mind, I can lend to Mr. Moore. He and Abby have been effortlessly working with Ms. Wilkins at CSP to make sure that we have everything in place. So I can let them give you an update of where we are today, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Chris, you're on. Thank you.
So we did meet with CSP today. Just kind of they gave us an overview of where we were with the reconciliation of funds spent, and then also like remaining allocation for grant year 1, which runs through 9/31. We're getting those final bits of reimbursements requested in advance. That way we can finalize year 1 and implement year 2 budget. Working a lot with Daniel as well. Daniel, he's been great helping us with the lease stuff and helping us with other questions that we have. So where we are right now is there's a couple of outstanding items, like very few, like of 200 items, there's maybe 1 or 2 that are outstanding support from Equip Academy. So we're going to get those to CSP to close those last few items out. And like I said, while we're in this meeting, I'm finishing the last like expenses from July through September. That way we can get that done and submitted, and we can finalize those figures. So that's kind of where we're at with that right now.
And I can just add that the things that were not CSP approved, we're making a packet to send to the foundation so that hopefully they can take care of that. So, and I'll get to that in my next 2 bullets.
Awesome. I just wanted the board to know how much has been happening behind the scenes as we think about the cascading impact that we've all experienced over the 6 weeks, just trying to get, as I like to use, University of Oregon, ducks in a row. And so I can go over later when we talk about the postmortem on what we're doing from a board perspective. But I just wanted to give you Kat and her team time to talk about everything that you've had to dedicate your time to. I feel like we're still putting out some fires. We're still in crisis management mode. But I think once we get past that, we'll be in a place to actually focus on the implementation and all the things that we need to do to start a very high functioning school.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. If I can just pause for a minute. We do have an individual that we didn't recognize that is from the public.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Maybe I didn't see that on my screen.
Marisol.
If the board is open, Marisol, I don't want to put you on the spot, but we do have place for public comment. I don't know if you just wanted to join, if you wanted to speak. I'll message you as well in the chat, and we can pivot from there. Okay, Kat, the floor is still yours to talk about enrolling and enrollment, lottery, etc.
Okay, thank you. So the enrollment discussion, so our future enrollment target we're hoping to expand to 80. I did check with legal today, so I know our charter says in the application that we are hoping for 75. There's no need to change it in the charter. So we'll still coordinate efforts to see if we can reach that 80. Right now, I'm excited to say we do have 3 families that have been that have registered for interest. So, and I'd like to lend this to Abigail or Abby, because I do think that again, in giving her recognition, she had diligently worked with all these families and spoke to them, and there are 33 families who are still interested in returning. So, Abby, if you can give your spill on this, I feel like it's better said from you because you were in the waters.
Of course, happy to. Thank you, Kat. So I know that email that I sent Renee with the tracker, I believe you were the only one who got it on the board. You are welcome to send it to everyone if they would like as well. But just wanted to make sure that you had it. But essentially, yeah, called every family. Families were disheartened and not happy, but they understood and they supported us. We had at least 3 families say, like, what can I do to help? Or if you guys need anything, please give me a call. And we want to help. A lot of them asked, like, are you going to open next year though? Because we want to come. So I tracked all of those. So it ended up with 33 families. And from the list, and you know, when Renee shares it, you all will see it. There was, every student, I looked for schools and called every single school in their zip code to place them there, or I would ask them if they work somewhere else and if they'd like me to look at a different zip code. And then I would place them and I would connect them with that school, give them the information. And I called every one of those schools beforehand as well to ask them how many spots they had. Some schools in some areas already had wait lists. Some started that very same day that we were making calls, July 28th. So I informed families of that and gave them a couple other options. But it was definitely a very long day and needed to be done with a lot of love and care. So that's what I tried to do. In terms of, so for next year, Kat has been looking at the classroom and thinking about what would be best for the community and the students. And she's proposing, and we're proposing that we have 20 students per class, and which would mean, and to have 80 students total, which would be 40 kindergartners and then 40 first grade. So 2 sets of each. With that, we can meet the number of students that are supposed to be in the classroom according to the state and not necessarily apply for a waiver. And already we've had 3, as Kat said, we've had 3 new families apply and show interest. So at this time, the application is not open yet. The board would have to pass and draft the policy for enrollment for the next year, which if it's similar to the one from last year, officially we would begin to receive intent to enroll forms on September 1st through December 31st, January 1st, the registration application would open. Lottery could happen in February or March, and then families would be enrolled after that. So there is a legal and proper process of how families will get to enroll for next year. But just kind of wanted to give you all that update. Kat, did you want me to talk about the other thing about those families?
Actually, yes, but I wanted to also add that I know we have waivers to have extra kids in the class, but if we're thinking authenticity and meeting our target goals for academic growth for our students, I'd rather not get any waivers and overpopulate our classes, especially if we're looking for teachers and growing them. I want to make sure that they have the ability to serve each child to as much as possible. With that, I will lend to Abby again on this in serving our students with that compassion and thanking them for their understanding. We have some thoughts about the lottery next year for the 33 families that remain interested. Go ahead, Abby.
Yeah, so it is possible and totally up to you all as the board for you all to give preferential points on a lottery for students that were enrolled last year or that were supposed to, start with us this year if they come back next year. A lot of families ask, I definitely want to come next year, but what if you guys have too many students? Or what if I don't get in? And it is something that you all could approve and pass that, of course, if a family that was enrolled this year and was supposed to come applies, they kind of like would get an extra point in the lottery. Any questions about that specifically? I want to make sure that that part is clear because it is totally up for you all to design.
Thank you, Mike, for raising your hand. I was just going to let board members know if you have a question or for clarification to please use the Zoom features raise hand. So Mike, you are on cue to ask your question.
Thank you. So not specifically about that, Abby or Kat, but I mean, I would love to have the problem, if you will, of a lottery. But one of the things that you know, we certainly struggled with this last go around was enrollment and getting even to, you know, 50, 60 students. So I'm just wondering, what is the plan for making sure we, let's say, have an overage, that we're actually in a lottery situation by that time? What is the plan for that?
I think the bigger question, so twofold, Mike, I think we can preemptively as a board create a policy around that. So if we were in that case, we would have something like ready to roll where our school staff could just run with that policy. But I think that we're just thinking 10 steps ahead. If we were into, you know, thinking about 40-40, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Abby, most of the students were kinder, so they would be first graders next year. And so if we're having 40 first graders, that's potentially 33 of the 40 slots. So being that we have 3 interested families, we could potentially be over that. And so I think we're just thinking 10 steps ahead about preemptively having something in place.
Oh, completely agree. We should have a policy. So yeah, that's absolutely necessary and that we should have. But I guess what I'm saying is that of the 33, let's say, or 36 with 33 plus 3, you know, they're going to attend another school. They may be perfectly happy with the other school to this time next year. So that 36 may turn out to be 15. I don't know, some number. It'd probably be less than 36 by the time next year rolls around. They move, they'd like their school, whatever. So let's say we do have some baseline starting of some number, but we have to get to at least 80 if that's what the budget and things that we're setting for. So my question is, you know, we tried certain marketing efforts. We had a lot of personal things which I don't plan on doing again. So what is the approach that we have for getting to full enrollment? That's really my question. And if you don't have an answer today, okay, that's fine. Don't make something up. But that's a key question I have for going forward.
Yeah.
If you know what it is, great. But if you don't, then please just let me know or let us know in the future.
Yeah, I think I definitely can provide an answer or some additional information. Just from my record, as you all know, I joined in February. From my record, when I joined, there were 3 students that submitted an application to enroll. That's February, right? When we were going to start in August. Right now, as of today, August 21st, we have 3 students that have already submitted an application for next year. And that's several months ahead. And we haven't formally or officially started and actually enrolling or just doing the community outreach work. But I do think a lot of, you know, there was a lot of work that was done in May and June and July. So on July 28th, when we called all the families, we actually had 65 students fully enrolled. From those 65, 11 were first graders and the rest were all kindergartners. So even if only 15 of them come back, we essentially enrolled 63 students in like 3 or 4 months, with the most students enrolling in May, once we had the building and had those in-person events. So we can, now that we have a building, right, we can start those in-person events in September. We can start all of those, the marketing in September. And if we're able to do that successfully and run the marketing ads that we also did late in the year last year, we should definitely average more than 10 to 15 students a month, which means we will have a lottery. At this point, especially with the response that families had to the phone calls, families have had to enrolling, we actually already have a list of pre-K students that we got from last year. So there, we just have students already like that we are ready to communicate with. And I would say that the Equip brand is still positive and it is good, and people are interested in coming to the school and want the school. So I think it will be a lot better and easier than last year, only because a lot of work was done last year in the last 2 or 3 months that made Equip something families are interested in.
And if I can add to this, we were gifted by CSP an enrollment. So with it is called the Bloomwell Group. So CSP gifted us a marketing specialist that we're going to work with. Abby and myself are going to work with soon to craft our enrollment and marketing plan. So they'll be helping us. So Mike, I know you're cutting the cord, so these individuals will definitely help us. So we do have what we're going to schedule a meeting with. His name is Lyman Millard, and he'll be helping us craft our marketing plan, and you all will see that once we're finished with it.
Thank you for that clarification. And I see Alejandra has her hand up, and then Sarah after. So Alejandra.
Hi everyone. First of all, I want to thank it's the assistant who's taking notes. I'm so sorry that I can't remember your name and it's not on the screen because I used to take notes and now I'm so happy to just be able to involve myself in the conversation. So I'm very grateful for you today. Yeah, and I'm sure James is as well. I also want to just echo and thank you, Abby. I can't even imagine what it was like to call all of those families, and for us on the board, and for myself, I don't want to speak for anybody else actually, but for myself, I was very worried about having to come back to people and be like, hey, you know what, never mind, we're not doing this anymore. Was a huge point of just consternation for me, and I thank you very much, and I know you handled it really, really well, because if you hadn't, we would not have had the positive response that we had. So I just want to thank you and give you kudos for that. I have two questions. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that when we first started all of this, one of the selling points for Equip was smaller classroom sizes, smaller than what was in the district schools. And I believe upping the classroom size to 20. I mean, it sounds like a good strategic plan, a good strategic move, but I'm a little concerned about that particular point of Equip being challenged by increasing that classroom size. So if you could speak to that, and oh gosh. Oh, and then I just wanted to voice my just wholehearted support for making sure that those families who are sticking with us, that were supposed to come to Equip this year but were not able to, and they will stick with us to come to Equip next year, absolutely want them to have priority in any way that is possible for them to make sure to have a spot at Equip next year when we do open.
And I don't want to speak for Kat and Abby, but I might be able to clarify the classroom size. We're actually decreasing the classroom size. There was a waiver in place to actually have it at 25, or they're actually decreasing it. So that way it's more in line with the district. But I don't want to speak for Kat and Abby, but
well, and we know that the promise on our website, and we definitely had to take that down, was 13 to 15 students per class, and that was one of the reasons one of our hired staff didn't stay on. So if we want to stay small, then we can host 13 to 15 students within the class. But in order to meet the growth targets, to reach 450 by the fifth grade, we have to have at least 20. 20 is the amount that Kinder caps out at with New Mexico. So that's why I don't want to apply for any waivers and hope to meet that 20 for each class. So I'm feeling like if we're 75 to 80, then if we can meet that 75 at the 40th day, we'd still be good to go. I hope that answered your question, Alejandra.
Yeah, it did. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sarah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Renee. So just first of all, I definitely want to just reiterate gratitude for all of your work. I think, Abby, I think people are gonna remember the interactions that you had for this whole next year. And I think that, coupled with the fact that I think they'll probably continue to hear from us in the meantime, I think that'll really just kind of strengthen the interest that they have in us. And I would be very surprised if we didn't have a really strong kind of cohort of returning families who want to be here next year. So I definitely I think that's a really nice, just a good faith gesture, just Thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for still being interested. We want to honor that and give you preference. I think that's a really just a nice thing to do for this community that has stood by us. I do have a question, because I just want to know, is this policy, like, would that kind of stay in place, or is this something that we renew every year? Because I've never heard of something like that, but it makes sense. And I know there are these schools where there's such a long wait list that, families, they do the lottery year after year after year, and they're always on the wait list. And I hate to see families stuck in that situation, but I've never heard of a way kind of around it like this.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So it a lot of charter schools have it, and technically and usually you have to have one. Every year though, you can adopt a new enrollment policy because you have to update it and change the dates of enrollment. Sometimes people will do the lottery in January instead of March, right? And it's usually best to align with whatever the Albuquerque Public Schools does for like their choice schools, if they have like magnet or gifted or like special programs. It's usually best to like connect with them that way. So families get the notification from every school on the same day, but technically you don't have to do that. It could also be earlier, it could be later. It's totally up to you all as a board. In terms of the lottery preferences, some schools all do it differently. Some of those preferences that are common are like children of staff or leaders of the school get preference, right? Like after that, it's like students that have low income get preference. You can't do anything like students that are gifted get preference. Can't do that. You can't do like students that have special education get preference, because that's like selecting and too selective. But you can do something like students from this specific zip code or these 3 zip codes get preference. If you're like, for example, for us, since we're not in the West Side, but we're trying to serve the West Side, that might be one that we adopt to help those kids get in. Because it usually does become like a big thing quickly, and families are interested. And it's not even like if it opens on September 1st and I apply on September 1st, does that mean I got in? No, actually, you have to wait till the lottery gets picked, and that's how you decide or learn that you get accepted. And in no way, you can't do anything like, oh, well, you have to take this test. And if you take a test, then you get in. At charter schools are not allowed to do that. Could do a kindergarten readiness test for like information, but that has to be done after they've already been accepted. Because you can't like say no to any student. So yeah, those are a lot of like different examples of like what other schools do, and typically charter schools all have some enrollment lottery preferences that they can outline.
Thank you for the information. That's really interesting to know. I appreciate that.
Oh, and sorry, the second part, something to be clear, once students start, so if there's a kindergartner that starts next year, they automatically get their spot the following year. They don't need to reapply for the lottery. It's just the very first time that they apply to get in. That's why, so in this case, it's a little weird since families had applied, we're registered, we're getting ready to start, and then we didn't.
And I went to there's actually state statute like on this process. So we could, if this is something we're interested in thinking of, which I think it's a good idea to have, I can work with Kat and their team to make sure that we can come up with something that makes sense, that's also aligned and compliant with the current laws, and making sure that we're not overstepping. But it's definitely something that we're required to do. We're required to have a lottery process anyways, and I think that I think we're just a unique situation. We've never encountered this before, so we can definitely work with the powers that be to kind of navigate that process. Any other questions about lottery enrollment for Kat and Abby?
Madam Chair, if I may, I just too want to say that I'm very grateful for this team, and we know that the last couple of months were very, very stressful, and we know that you were pushed to the limits. I know as the governing board we were, but again, thank you so much for sticking it out with us and allowing yourself to get put out there, because I'm sure it wasn't fun calling all of the families. And the biggest thing that we had as a board and the priority that we have were the families. And I'm sure that they told you a lot. I'm sure some got upset. I'm sure some were very happy. What I would like to see just in the back burner until we get closer to when we do open, for those families that really stuck it out with us, I'd like to see an event just for them or some type of thing where the board can be there, as many of us that we can, to say thank you because they're the ones that are actually springboarding us into next year. Otherwise, we could have been in the same predicament next year like we were this year. So I think we should just do something special for them, even if it's some type of a golden tchotchke or whatever it may be, right? An appreciation, but then also too, maybe reach out to those families that are going to reach that stick with us and see if we can get any referrals from them. Because it seems like families know families with the same child's age around the right. Birds of a feather stick together, and also do something for them if they do refer. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. But I too wanted just to express my appreciation and thank you. And I know it was hard. I know it. And again, thank you.
Echo all that sentiment. Thank you, board members, for your great questions. So moving on to foundation finances. So Kat.
So at current, as of August 18th, the foundation banks of New Mexico Bank and Trust, the current balance is $300,634.37. By tomorrow morning, we will submit a packet to pay $10,568.82 for reimbursements. Of course, those were items that CSP wouldn't cover, marketing, our cell phone, things of that nature, reimbursements to individuals who paid out of pocket, Abby, to get things done and using those marketing tools. So we're trying to get that money, again, just tighten everything up and get everything paid for so we can start fresh. So Dr. Rodriguez is working on getting the bank statements, so I'll have all the information in one folder and we'll start taking care of all that. So they are working on their 501c3 too, so I have to also check with him to make sure that we can look for more grants and see how we can build this budget. Madam Chair, I stand for any questions on that area.
Anyone have any questions about foundation finances? Okay, let's move on to some governance and board operations. So the first thing is committee reports. The first being the governance committee. Again, I'll echo James. In addition to us having the multiple governance board meetings in the last 6 weeks, James and I had a lot of our own governance committee meetings. But one of the more important things is by changing our meetings, we have to approve a new Open Meetings Act resolution because the one that we originally approved is now wrong because we have different dates. So I want to give you a second to look at that item. All it does is move our meetings to the third Thursday of the month instead of the second. And for some reason, the Charter School Division asks for more than just third Thursday, even though according to Daniel, that meets the Open Meetings Act. But the Charter School Division has a whole separate protocol that they want us to actually make sure that our meetings are noted and that we approve this as a board. So all that's doing is basically changing the date. So I'll give you a moment to process that. But when you have a moment, if we could just have a motion to approve our updated Open Meetings Act resolution with our new dates of the third Thursday of the month.
I'll go ahead and make that motion to adopt our new Open Meetings Act resolution. This is Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Alejandra.
So if you can use your Zoom reactions, all in favor, the motion on the table is to approve our new Open Meetings Act resolution with the new dates. And Savannah, thank you for taking notes. Just to verify, it was a unanimous approval from all our present board members. Awesome. Thank you for that. I'll go ahead and get that updated with the Charter School Division so they have our new Open Meetings Act resolution. So moving on to Finance Committee. Janet, the floor is all yours.
All right, thank you, Renee. I do want to echo the rest of the board members and just thank you for everything. And Kat has been very communicative, and Abby has been a great resource for all kinds of things. And I'm sorry that I didn't utilize her expertise as often as we could have before now. So I've definitely learned a lot in the last few weeks from the both of them. So thank you so much for everything that you do. So we're going to do finance report out a little differently than we have in the previous months, kind of like how we're doing the agenda a little differently. So you all should have seen the packet through the link before this meeting. And so I'll just talk to it instead. So the first item is budget adjustment request. We do have a bar this month because we have to adjust out all the operational expenses for the school since we did not open. So that's all the bar is. That money didn't actually come into our bank account. So that's for the public education department. Okay, so then for number 2, for payroll and accounts payable payment vouchers, we had very few checks cut in July compared to previous months. The majority of that is actually to a publishing company, which Kat is still looking into. There is some opportunity to potentially return some of the curriculum monies. We will talk through that as Kat gets a chance to go through all the curriculum that was ordered and what we do want to go with going forward. Aside from that, there was a minor gas bill and then payroll liabilities for July. Okay.
We don't have them as the consent. I guess we'll just go through item by item. So the first thing I have on the table, I'd like to make a motion to approve the bars as presented by our treasurer. Is there a second?
Mike Quinn, seconds.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and use our Zoom reaction. The motion on the table is to approve the bars as is. So if we could just give those a gander for a second and give Savannah a moment to record that. Thank you. Okay, the next item is the payment vouchers as presented. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the payment vouchers as presented by our treasurer, Janet. Is there a second?
James Abeta Stevens, seconds.
Thank you, James. So there is a motion on the table to approve the payment vouchers as presented. So if we could just use our Zoom reaction tools again. And let's go ahead and vote for those. Vote.
Does James get extra credit for using extra thumbs up when he approves it?
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I think he does. He gets extra credit. Thank you, Janet. So if you want to talk about anything else regarding your finance committee.
And thank you, Renee, for slowing me down there. I forgot those all needed to be approved. So the number 3 item, I actually wanted to talk about. So I know we all wanted a budget overview in July. We will do that at a later time because as of now, we are just stuck with the same budget we started with, and there's no point changing it right now because we might be changing class sizes, various other expenses, and it just wouldn't be a good use of the board's time to go over a budget that we presented at the hearing a couple years ago. So that's the status of the budget. In terms of fiscal planning, I just wanted to say thank you to Kat, Renee, Abby, everyone who's been on all these CSP calls to reconcile, Chris especially, to reconcile and summarize to the CSP. We will do a little recap of it at a future finance committee meeting, but right now it is what it is of what we spent, and there may be some returns like I had mentioned. So a lot of things will change in the coming months.
Thanks, Janet, for taking the lead on that. And I also want to echo that after our meeting in June, I had initially reached out to K-12 accounting to figure out how we can, as a governing board, learn more about the fiscal pieces. So it's not just all on Janet and Mike. And so Janet's actually taking the lead to work with K-12 to work on some official training for us as a board. We have to do training anyways. I know some of us have fulfilled that in some other areas, but I still think, yeah, we have a minimum of hours that we have to comply with. But I do think it's good for us as a governing board, because of this fiscal oversight, for us to get as much training as we can added to our tool belt. So thank you, Janet, for me being able to delegate that to you and you taking over with coordinating that later in the year for us. Any questions about budget or anything Janet talked about before we move on to some board chair stuff and some strategic planning and some postmortem? Hearing none, let's move on to the fun stuff. Thank you all for bearing with us. So as the board chair, I know I have talked to every single one of you in the last 6 weeks, but I really just want to acknowledge that our most recent fiasco was a lot. And I know that our previous hire did not meet expectation. And so as a board, something that we have to come to terms with, because the charter is with us as the Public Ed Commission, not with our head administrator, that even with prior hires, we had clear directives, we had clear policies, we had things in place that were very clearly violated. So this was also done without the board's full knowledge. And so this lack of transparency was something, as I'm thinking about from a governance perspective, we obviously fell short. We all have culpability. So what could we do to get better? But at the same time, emphasize that things happen, right? And I do want to acknowledge that I feel like when we were able to get the information at the right time, we were able to act swiftly and decisively. And so previous persons not in the role they are, we have a new hire. And I feel like we've strengthened a lot of our oversight structures to prevent something from like this reoccurring. So specifically, I've instituted a mandatory regular check-in with our head administrator. This isn't just a meet with me as you have questions. This is every week we are meeting for an hour. And that's minimum. I think, Kat, you and I have had lots of phone calls, lots of conversations, lots of messages back and forth. We're constantly in communication. So that is something that we're going to have in place. And it's just the fact that we're all under a microscope right now. So as we go forth, that's just something that I really should have held people's feet to the fire. And so I'll take full ownership that I was chasing people down, but I wasn't holding them accountable. So we've changed that. Also, something that I'm working with James and Kat on the background is we've revised our entire evaluation and accountability framework for our head administrator. So this has always been aligned with the performance framework from the Public Education Commission, but based on just some conversations I've had with Excellent Schools New Mexico and some of the criteria that they work with other high performing schools, like what makes a high performing school? What are some of the metrics? Those are some things that I'm discussing that we're adding into this performance framework. That way we can make sure that as we go through this process with our head administrator, that those are very clear from the get-go. And so that we're constantly reaffirming, we're making sure we're on track. And so we're all very clear and on the same page. And I'll make sure this is in our board drive, but I'll just make sure you all have access to it too. Of course, you already have access to it, but I know that there's going to be some transitions as we migrate that over. But I just want to let you know that that's something that we're really holding strong and we're staying steadfast to. The other thing is we're trying to have an increased board visibility in all the operational and fiscal decisions, even though we kind of had a tangential piece in. Janet's done a great job in that. Janet and I are also meeting weekly. That's something that we've kind of we'd reach out to each other when we had questions, but this is something that we have standing in our governance structure now, is that the board chair is going to meet with the finance committee chair on a more regular basis. And then just making sure that all the governance protocols that we adopt and go through, it's not just us creating the policy and passing it in a monthly board meeting, but that we're also working with Kat and her team to culture that with the staff. Because clearly we had nepotism policies, clearly we had grievance policies, clearly there were policies in place that would allow staff to come to the board if there were any issues. There were clearly policies in place that you cannot hire family members without board approval, but those weren't being, adhered by. So what could we do as a board besides just passing the policy, checking the block that we're compliant, but more importantly, how are we working with the head administrator to work with the school to ensure that we're doing that? So some of these things I'm packaging together, working with Kat and her team, that is going to go to the charter school division and something that I'm taking to the next PEC meeting. I'm waiting to hear back from Daniel on what's required from us as a board. If it's just like, one or two of us, do we all need to be present? I also want to give kudos to Sarah and Mike for showing up for the last meeting when I wasn't able to be present. I think you all represented the board adequately. And we all know this experience was disappointing. I feel like we all have egg on our face. But I also feel like this whole experience was a learning experience. It really highlighted the necessity for better oversight for us, and kind of putting that mirror in front of our face is what can we do better to strengthen our governance practices. And so I would say this isn't just an isolated failure of us. I mean, we all have culpability, but this is, I don't think, a reflection of our capacity or commitment. I think we all did what we thought was the right thing to do. So going forward, I just wanted to highlight these key areas in our governance protocols to make sure that we're more vigilant and that we're united. I'm very proud to be part of this board. I think we came together on a really hard thing. We made some hard decisions, but we did it with integrity, strong leadership, and the focus on those families. And I think that our organizational readiness is the reason why the PEC, the charter school division, they're all seeing that they still believe in this. And I think that was so evident in why we got this additional implementation year, is because of the way that we acted in this process. So I just want to give moment as a postmortem. We've all been through on some days, depending on the mood I'm in. We're in a public recorded meeting, so I'll be politically correct, but it's felt like a roller coaster ride going upside down all around that we feel like we haven't been able to get off. So I feel like we're still putting out fires. We're still, working in crisis management mode, but I do feel very confident in some of the structures that we're changing, some of the reports that we're working on. I want to say Kat and I are working together. It's been amazing to work with you, Kat. Thank you for being responsive to every text and being ready to go above and beyond. It's been incredibly helpful from a board standpoint. So I'm going to pause for any questions, clarifications as I go through documenting what I've said, anything that I need to think about differently as the board chair as we prepare for this September meeting. So Mike, you had your hand up first, and then James, you're after. So Mike.
Yeah.
Please fill.
So, I mean, a few things, first of all. So, I do think that this board has been tremendous. I mean, the work we put in, and especially, you guys put in, as I said before, a ton of work even before I joined. And, Renee, I think your leadership has been incredible, and the work you put in. So, in that sense, I think we all did the best we could, certainly, and that being said, I do think when I think about the things that were asked of us from the PEC and some of the statements that were made, like epic fail, total, totally blew it, system breakdown. I think we do owe them a deep dive, and not just not to point fingers. It's to, I really think we would be doing the whole charter school system a great service if we could really do a deep dive into this and look at it from a system standpoint and provide some formal lessons learned, because I think it is us first and foremost. I mean, she was our one employee, and we are first and foremost culpable. However, PCSNM, they had a role, their mentorship role. What happened there? I mean, Excellent Schools New Mexico, I mean, they had a role in setting this up. So it's like, what could and should everybody have done differently, and what could we teach, and pass on to other schools and to PEC, so they can, have this as their corporate knowledge in the future. So, personally, I was thinking the board would participate in a postmortem, everybody on the board. I don't think it's just Renee or just one or two people. And certainly, And I want to say going forward, I have great confidence in Kat and Abby, and now meeting Savannah for the first time. I don't really have concerns per se going forward. I think we've got great people, and everything I've heard today, and even the things you just said we're going to do, makes sense. Those are good things. Everything Kat and Abby have talked about sound like we're going to be in good shape. That being said, I think we'd be doing a disservice if we don't take the time to really say, all right, here's what the whole system should have done differently, including us, and present that formally. And I would like to be part of that. I mean, I have a analytical mind, a systems operated mind. I think I could provide value in that kind of process, and I'd like to. And I kind of feel like I kind of said that to the PEC. I kind of said we're going to give you that, not, and it goes beyond just 3 or 4 policy changes, in my opinion. So that's what so I would actually request sometime between now and then that we do that as a board. That's my request, and the rest of the board and Renee as chairman, you can consider that. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. James?
Hi, everyone. So what Renee was talking about is more about just tightening our screws, right? And making sure that we do what we say we're going to do, but we also believe what we say to the different boards that we have to present. So one thing that the governance committee is working on, and this goes along with what Mike just stated and what Renee was talking about in her board update, but the governance committee came up with a form, and it outlines our personal governance committee mission, as well as what role the governance committee plays in the key points that we have. And it's broken down by topics and then sub bullets on what we're responsible for. So sometimes on boards and subcommittees, we don't know what we don't know until you define it and how it plays in the overall support picture to lift up our school. So the governance committee, we defined it, and that's how we're going to run going forward, and not just meet just to meet, right? We have a purpose that's going to fulfill all of these roles. So our ask is that each committee within this board come up with something very similar so we could put in our board manual. That way it makes us stay focused to where what Mike was saying, we don't go off the rails. And we learn from everything, and we still don't, and we don't have that egg on our face and feel like we do. So Renee and I will be sending it out via email. We want you to look at it. Remember, it is a living document, so it can be changed, but we also want feedback on it. And we're encouraging the finance committee and the other committees on the board to do the same thing, just so we know what focus areas we are looking at and proceeding forward from there. It's easy to go down rabbit holes with governance, and we did that, and we own that. We know that. But this will help keep us on track. So, and it also helps Kat know what role the governance is, because we're not operations, but we do give advice and assistance and support on behalf of what we do know. So I'm going to go ahead and the chair and I will send it out so you guys can see. So please give us feedback, and I encourage you to do one for your committee as well.
Thank you, James. And I think that helps with, obviously to our board manual, but also future onboarding of future board members. So it becomes a training spot, and that hence why we sent out the acknowledgement form and the conflict of interest, is we're really trying to shore up these processes because it's also important, but it's also important for the training. Something else that I also did, and I've offered it to all folks, but they haven't taken me up on it, is I created 2 case studies on some of the fiascos we've been through, involving everything's anonymized, no personal information is set, but it's really much set on like how can future boards, because I can tell you, as someone who's like a super achiever, I went and I was one of the first people of all the new charter schools to finish the training that New Mexico PED, well, the charter school division offered for us to become an official board of finance. And I took a lot of notes and I downloaded things, and I didn't feel like I walked away with actually learning anything. And they're required by law to train us. So I'm thinking, what else can we provide the field? So I've had conversations with PCSNM, is we need to offer the board more support early on, especially for new schools. I also think the charter school division, there's things that they could have done as well. I mean, there was lots of systems failures, not just ours on part of the board, but those are some things that we're thinking. about course correcting and thinking about moving forward. Because eventually I go into, we can't rehash the past, it happened, but how can we move forward and prevent this from happening again? Because I don't want any of our volunteers who, this is already a huge lift for us to come to these meetings away from our family and those we love, all the things that we're asking you to do. And then we had what happened. That's a lot. I don't want to ever put future volunteers in that position again, because that doesn't feel good for anybody involved, especially when we all have full lives. So we're thinking about course correcting. So thank you, James, for bringing that piece up. That will definitely get sent to you all. Mike, I don't want to ignore your suggestion, but I also want to hear from other board members just on everything we've talked again about this, just reflecting on the last 6 weeks. Any other thoughts? Sarah, you have your hand up.
I think the only thing, and I've been trying to find the words and I feel like I still haven't quite found them. But you know, yes, the responsibility lies with us as the governing board. We have that responsibility that we committed to before the state of New Mexico with these families and our community. But I mean, if you guys watched that last PEC hearing, the frustration was palpable because they felt culpable too. And they were very much, I think they were every bit as bewildered as we were. And they're just like, what went wrong? What did we miss? Where were the red flags? And I bring that up because I've really been struggling with a lot of just like guilt and feelings of just, am I a fraud? Like what have we done wrong? And I think it's just because like we did do our best and we checked all the boxes. And there's that horrible saying that you know, warnings are written in blood. You know, we have to learn sometimes from really terrible mistakes. And I think unfortunately we find ourselves in a position where we have to be an example in not a very good place for the entire system to improve. So I just raise that to kind of maybe be a balm to you guys, because I think we're all just very conscientious people. We take our responsibility really seriously. And for anybody else who's been kind of beating yourself up over what we did or didn't do right, I do just want to add that. And I think everything that you've mentioned, Renee, I think those are perfectly appropriate steps to start taking. And I think that as we continue to kind of go through more systematically, I think other measures we can take will become clearer too, and we can hopefully help everyone make their board a little bit stronger.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other board member thoughts on this? Mike, if you're okay with this, I think James and I will reach out to you directly. We have a governance committee in like a week and a half. So reach out to you just to make sure that, because I've been back and forth with James. I know he's getting ready to go on a cruise, but I think you'll be back by then so we can connect. And then I've been communicating with
When
Kat.
would that date be, Renee? 'Cause, when would that be?
It's like the first week of September. James,
Okay,
help
yeah,
me out here.
I'm in California leaving tomorrow, but I should be back by Monday, I think, which is the 1st or the 2nd. I think it's
It'll
the
be
1st, so,
it's going to be a Wednesday, so we
okay,
can,
yeah, I
we
should be
can-
back by then. Yeah,
Madam Chair, it is September 3rd.
Perfect. Mike,
Yeah,
if you're okay
that-
with that, I'll just
yeah.
invite you to that. And then,
Okay.
of course, all other board members, once we come up with a more solidified kind of statement to the PEC, feel free. I mean, this is an open meeting. Anybody can go. I just also want to be mindful that we've taken a lot of your time in the past 6 weeks, but definitely want to be strategic and intentional about that. So thank you for that, Mike. Appreciate your time. Okay, moving on to rebranding and rebuilding trust. Now that we've talked about this. So based on everything we've been through and thinking about us as a board moving forward, what are some of the things we can do to start to rebuild that community trust in light of our recent challenges? Mike?
Well, I probably walked into this meeting because I given this a lot of thought beforehand, and like, should we, and there was a suggestion at some point in some forum about, should we even change our name and not and I saw something about that and I thought, maybe we should, and now, but after hearing Abby speak and Kat, and, I'm not so sure that that's what we should do. I mean, it sounds like we have some decent brand equity. So I've kind of changed my mind from where I probably walked into this meeting. Certainly open to hear other people's thoughts. But the other thing that I wanted to at least take a step back and ask that, particularly, Kat and, in her leadership position, and Abby and Renee, that, we even rethink, and I don't crucify me over this, but even the original focus of Equip, because I got to say, when we finally picked a location, and I was working, a lot with Mercy on, like, how do we break down the demographics, and I was helping her do zip code analysis and looking at, okay, where can we, if we're going to go out and do door-to-door stuff, where should we be doing it? And as I was doing that, I looked at all the charter schools around that place, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of charter schools, and a lot of them had similar sounding, focuses as us. So I just want to make sure that whether we change the name or not, we stay Equip, okay, but we at least take an open mind and don't just keep going down the same path. And maybe we end up exactly where we were. That's fine, but I would at least ask that we think about it and just really make sure that this part, because every charter school has their secret recipe, right? Or the not secret recipe, but with their focus. And I just want to make sure that we're like, yes, this is still where we want to focus. So I would just put that out for thought, and maybe future discussion, but at least thought.
And just to clarify that, Mike, you're kind of going with the second question I had was like, do we need to reconsider name changes, color palette, logo changes, things like that? But before I get to that, I do want to reiterate, we do have a very clear charter, and we have mission specific goals in the performance framework that are very much approved by the PEC. So as long as we can stay true to figuring out how to achieve those, I think those conversations are possible. But I would advocate that we lean upon Kat and her expertise as the head of school to help us navigate some of those conversations, and are they really necessary? Because I think that's something that we've been talking about from the very beginning, is what makes Equip stand out from the rest, right? And I don't want the recent challenges to like cloud that. There is a very uniqueness to it, and we got to come up with something. And I think I'm just very grateful that we have this professional PR firm ready and gifted to us to be able to do that. And James, you had your hand up, so please feel free.
Yeah, I just want to mention, going back, the actual word equip is an acronym, right? And it ties into what the values and the mission and the vision and what we stand for, and that's what we presented, or you all presented to get chartered. So I think we need to remain with the equip because it does fall in line with what we truly believe in. So I think going forward we keep equip. Maybe we reimagine redefine the color palettes and maybe look at the different colors with reds or purples or whatever it is, and you could refresh it without rebranding it.
Any other board thoughts on what we've talked about? Sarah?
Have we had any indication from our marketing folks that we should do that? Because my gut reaction is we have people who are interested. We're still building on this community, and I feel like they might be taken aback by a rebrand, and they would maybe question whether they want to try and come back next year, because I just don't want to create any confusion about, is it the same school? Like what's going on, unless someone from kind of the marketing industry is telling us this is how you handle these kinds of situations.
As of today, the PR firm, it's just been conversation. Nothing's been taken to the PR firm before I took it to you all. So again, if that's a stronger conversation, I can definitely take that back to them and ask them their opinion.
I mean, I'm not a marketing expert, but I'd like to lean into what Sarah just said. Is I do think that our vice chair is right, thinking, is this like necessitated, or was this just like, I get it, we want to move on from this, we want to, like, as humans, we want to like shed all of that and like reborn and rebirth. I do understand the psyche around that, but at the same time, is it necessary? And so I would like to lean into the experts as well to kind of see, is that necessary, or can we dust off the rubble, rise up, and continue to do this good work? I'd love to lean into some of the experts in that.
Madam Chair, I will give them a call tomorrow and follow up with an email and get back to you all.
Thank you. Any other, Alejandra?
Yeah, I just want to echo Sarah. I would want to hear what it is that an expert has to say. I also think though, that the trust we've built on the Equip name and the Equip brand, and I don't think that that trust should go anywhere, right? Like I think a rebranding might, like Sarah said, like alarm people, and I think that maybe a rebranding or a renaming is in the front of our minds as a board because of how close and like in the fire we've been for the past 6 weeks. And so it feels like this explosive thing right within our world. But I think this was handled so eloquently in the external world to where continuing to like make a bigger kind of like thing about it might bring up more questions rather than like just moving forward with the trust and the people that the external world has come to know, and just continuing on with Abby, who they've been talking to for so long, like the people, all of us showing up at events, and the colors and the brand that they've come to know and trust. And I think it really speaks volumes that people were like, oh, like, where are you guys going? Are you going to come back next year? Like, I think that it was handled with care to the point where what we feel that has been this like just absolute explosion of something isn't how it's been perceived to our future families. And I think kind of just keeping up with that and what they've come to know might be our best just moving forward.
Thank you, Alejandra. Any other board thoughts on rebranding, marketing, clarification? Okay, the last thing I wanted to talk about, which is all related to these things, is we're in charge of strategic planning, and I feel like we haven't been able to fill our role because we've been in crisis management. So that's something Kat and I are meeting weekly, and we're still putting out fires, but we're getting closer. The updated evaluation she was sent, which I'll make sure you all can see, it's in our board drive. She's already answered some of the questions beautifully, which I know that there's a lot more, Kat, to go through. But I just want to think about this as James and I are thinking about some of these governance protocols. What should be included? Thinking about this next year, again, we have another planning year. I feel like we're getting a do-over. It feels like Groundhog Day in some ways, but a little different. Is what should be included in a high-level strategic plan to make sure that we're addressing the academic, organizational, operational, and financial priorities for Equip Academy. Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if we were sticking with the hand thing. Well, I was encouraged to hear in the finance committee that, Kat and Abby are, and I think Janet too, have already started working on a 5-year financial plan. So certainly I think that's a big piece of it. Given that we have I believe a almost 5-year commitment to the facility, which, is good, mostly good, in my opinion, because I think it's got space to grow. It's like what kinds of things do we need to do do we need to make any improvements there? But probably my biggest concern is about the educational support, and not coming from an educational background, just excuse me if I don't use the right words and terms, but even in going in when we thought we were on track, when we thought we were going to open, I remember thinking, boy, we have these requirements for certain groups, certain, you know, underserved groups and disabilities. And like, do we have teachers that are supporting that? I mean, I didn't seem like we did. We're just hiring people. So I know, you know, for me, and maybe that's a bit operational, but to me, it's also strategic to say, you know, of these groups we're going to serve, like, how are we actually doing that and getting the training and the people to do that, so that when we finally have our 80 students of a various mix of demographics and backgrounds and all these things, that how do we actually mesh that and make sure we're achieving the educational outcome for the students that are coming in. So I don't know if I'm stating that clearly, but you know, so yeah, we want the finance, we want a facility, but you know, really it's that, I mean, because as great as Kat and Abby are, it's really the teachers, you know, they're the ones that are going to be interacting with students every day, right? And they're the ones who are going to make a difference in these kids' lives. So how do we make sure we have the strategy, if you will, to support them and get the people, you know, the training they need, and that hopefully that makes sense.
No, I think, Mike, you're hitting on, I mean, part of the performance framework that was approved by the Public Ed Commission has academic, operational, financial pieces. And under the academic, there are very clear things around monitoring academic success. And so some of these things, bless Kat's heart, there's a lot in this evaluation that was updated, mainly for twofold. Is we needed to update it because we're under a microscope. So we need to have very poignant questions. And so I'll make sure you all have access to this, but there are some questions in here around how are we ensuring that we have things in place to support our leaders, not our leaders, I'm sorry, our teachers, because we know that the test results, especially in literacy, looking at the data in New Mexico, they're going to come in lower than we're anticipating. So if we're thinking about this benchmark of 70%, and students are coming in at a lower rate, that's a huge lift, right? So what are we ensuring structures are in place to make sure that teachers are effective, and not just effective, but that every teacher is teaching consistently against some of these benchmarks? And then more importantly is, how are we supporting the teachers? Because we want to retain them. It's not just about recruiting them, but it's also about retaining them. And so there are some questions that I have included, and this is based on some conversations I've had with Excellent Schools in New Mexico, because they are working with high performing schools. And I've asked very poignant questions. Is there a guide somewhere in the state of New Mexico that identifies like 10 key traits of high performing public charter schools? They're like, oh, well, we talked about it, and they'll verbally tell me, but I'm like, that would be a great resource to have in our state. But I was told, well, nobody reads and no one's going to read it. And I was like, I totally hear that, but I still think we should strive to have something, right? So I'm trying to get that information because I think that feeds into the strategy, right? Is how are we ensuring that Kat is thinking about these things? So thinking about the large percentage of low-income students, the students who are coming in with disabilities, is where's our intervention in place to make sure that we're supporting them? And I know I said a lot, so I'm going to pause there. Kat, this is really questions directed at you, but I think from a strategy board lens, it is something that we need to make sure we have in place. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. And in doing the 5-year plan, I will say that although I give Abby accolades, I will have to tell you that she broke my heart, because as I was putting my staffing plan together and Chris was typing it all in, I had hopes of staff, and that won't happen without money. So we are looking in the future for interventionists, things of that nature. What I have done is I've reached out to the colleges and their intern, the Grow Your Own plans for the state. So, you know, when you go into a public school and you have a veteran teacher, you walk in and they just want the curriculum laid out and they go step by step, right? So I'm hoping to enlist some new teachers and veteran teachers who want to look at the curriculum, build it, base it on their evidence with all the talents in the classroom, and try to serve them. I mean, Mr. Quinn, that is something I've been thinking very strongly about. And again, without funding, it's hard to reach the level of the staff that I need to serve the demographic that we're hoping towards. So my goal is to just get as many qualified teachers as possible that fit within our budget, and just, you know, have some collegial coaching, ongoing professional development, and hoping that they're eager to shift in the classroom as the students need. So that's, again, one of my priorities is finding adequate staff who are in it for the long haul, and definitely will give their heart to the students and more. So that's a prayer right now, because again, without the funding, I can't have the dream staff of my choice.
And what I'll do too between now and our next meeting is I'll make sure you all know exactly where this performance framework is. I don't want to necessarily share it here in a public meeting because Kat's already responding and that's in the personnel area, but I'll make sure you all have access to that so you can get in and see some of the questions that we're already drafting, thinking about the academic framework. Any other things? So we've talked about academic things too, and I'm looking at time here too, but we can go over if we need to. Any other things that we need to be thinking about besides academic and what's already in the performance framework? Awesome. This is going to be an ongoing conversation. We're going to have time in every meeting to make sure that we're covering this. This is something James and I have talked a lot about. We're going to be talking about it. Things that Kat and I are talking about. And then, of course, Janet and I have been meeting about finance stuff. So I do feel like we've shored up a lot of those processes, tightened those screws, and hopefully going to move forward to a stronger school opening in the fall of 2026. So with that, I don't have anything else on the agenda. The only next steps is we're going to share some of these resources with you. Make sure you know where things are. Just the housekeeping things. Bear with us. Be patient as we migrate another drive over. We're going to make sure links are not broken. We'll get it shored up, I promise. And if you at any time cannot find something, feel free to reach out to me, text me, call me. I'm always available to redirect you or answer your question if I can. So without that, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn at 8:29 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Is there a second?
Mike Quinn, seconds.
And I'm just going to assume we're all in favor of that. But we don't need to officially vote on that. So if that's the case, then we'll officially adjourn at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Thank you, Savannah and Abby, for taking notes. Thank you, Kat, for your updates. And thank you, board members, for bearing with us and sticking with us. I look forward to continually working with you all through this process.
Have a good night,
Have a good
everybody.
evening.
Bye.
Everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
All right, good night.